All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be exploring a pretty unsettling idea today, drawn from a series of philosophical texts that, well, they give voice to some very strange concepts. We're talking about how language, the very thing we use to build bridges and share ideas, can also be a weapon, a really profound one. So, let's just start with the big one, the question that hangs over this whole explainer. Can a word actually be an act of violence? Seems simple, right? But the answer, you'll see, is anything but. It twists and turns through intent, meaning, and the very nature of what it means to speak. You see, the sources we're digging into today, they don't see language as just, a way to communicate. For them, it's something way more potent, something that carries a real, tangible, and often destructive force. They see words not as symbols, but as actions in and of themselves. And things get murky really fast. Take this quote from a character called the Robot Roller. It basically asks, hey, if a machine's reality is just the data it's fed, and a person's reality is just their experience, what's the real difference? This throws a wrench in everything, right? It suggests that telling a lie or just being mistaken or telling the truth, the intent behind it all is incredibly hard to pin down. And this idea of murky intent leads us straight to the first way language can cause real harm. It's not about being clear. It's about doing the exact opposite. It's about using ambiguity as a weapon. This line from the Frost Goblin, it's just a perfect metaphor. A blade without a hilt? Think about it. It's a weapon you can use to cut someone without ever leaving your own fingerprints on it. It's the perfect way to describe how you can attack someone with words. And then, when you're called out, just shrug and say, that's not what I meant. And here's exactly how that works. On one side, you have the intended meaning. That's the sharp edge, the real message you're trying to send. But on the other, you have plausible deniability, the harmless-looking surface of the words. It's in that gap, that space between what you say and what you mean, where the violence gets to hide in plain sight. And the most important thing to get here is that this is not an accident. The Frost Goblin is telling us that ambiguity is a feature of language, not a bug, and it gets weaponized all the time. Using words that have double meanings, twisting the context of a conversation, it's all about a deliberate choice to create confusion. Language itself becomes the weapon. But okay, language doesn't just hide violence. It can also be used to stand up and shout about it, to justify it. This is where we move from the sneaky stuff to the overt, where words are used to build a whole argument for why cruelty is actually the right thing to do.
And for this, let's meet the Bull Warrior. He isn't hiding a thing. He's openly saying, I love causing pain, it's just who I am. But then comes the twist. He frames it as his victim's choice. He uses language to completely flip the script and wash his hands of any responsibility. It's chilling.
And what the Bull Warrior is doing is a masterclass in this exact thing, justification. He isn't just being violent. He's building a whole philosophy around it. He's twisting ideas like free will and desire to make his awful actions seem, at least to himself, totally reasonable. And this brings us right back to the Frost Goblin. See, the Bull Warrior is the one doing the rationalizing in a very specific, brutal way. But the Frost Goblin basically reveals itself to be the abstract concept behind him. It admits, I am the thing that rationalizes violence. Why? For why not? It suggests that this impulse is just a fundamental force of nature. So now we get to what is maybe the most twisted use of language of all. Not as a hidden blade, not as a justification, but as a lure. Using words to create a false sense of security to draw a victim into a trap they never see coming. Just look at the process laid out by the carnivorous plant. This isn't a head-on attack. It's a careful, deliberate trap. It uses the language of nature, sunlight, sweet smells, the promise of food, to construct a completely false reality. The victim is drawn in by something that seems wonderful, right before being destroyed. And the key word here is useful. The plant flat out says that raising hopes with subtle, appealing language is a tool. That sweetness isn't an accident. It's a calculated part of the weapon, designed to make the final, sudden dashing of those hopes that much more effective. Okay, so a plant tricking an insect, that's one thing. But the text immediately makes us ask a much more uncomfortable question. What happens when the predator looks exactly like the prey? And there it is. The plant's logic suggests that the most dangerous predators aren't the obvious monsters from far away. They're the ones inside our own groups, our own communities, the ones who can insidiously pretend to be one of us because we're hardwired to trust them. It's a terrifyingly universal idea. So let's try to bring all these ideas together. We've got ambiguity, rationalization, deception. These aren't just separate tactics. These texts are suggesting that they all point to something much deeper, a kind of fundamental violence that's baked into communication itself. And to really get this final point, we have to listen to the Overgrown statue. Its words are this chaotic flood of poetry and violence. It talks about an Ouroboros of static. You know, the snake eating its own tail, but imagine it's made of meaningless noise. It's describing an endless, self-consuming loop where communication is just violence folding in on itself forever. Then the statue makes this horrifying claim. Blood is all that is forecasting. In this worldview, violence isn't something that interrupts the normal state of things. It is the normal state of things. It's the only thing the future holds. And this malice, this hate, isn't simple. The statue says hate is diverse. It has tons of different forms. Those ambiguous blades, those selfish rationalizations, those sweet deceptions we just talked about, they're all just different faces of the same core force that's woven into the fabric of our world. And then, out of all that chaos, the statue drops this one cryptic line that gets to the very heart of this entire explanation. A morpheme, you might remember, is the smallest possible unit of meaning in language, like a prefix or a root word. The statue is telling us that the violence isn't in the insults or the lies. It's in the very building blocks. The malice is in the source code of language itself. And so, we're left with one final, kind of unavoidable question to think about. If this malice really is embedded in the very morphemes we use every single day, what does that mean for us? What kind of blades, what rationalizations, what sweet deceptions might be hiding completely unnoticed in the words that you speak? Something to think about.